So, with the return of the northern residents, a small visit by the southern residents, and a live stranding of Bigg's orcas, and somewhat of a mystery surrounding a calf in a very famous duo. The last 2 months have been busy to say the least. Now, we have had some orca related news, and that is very relevant to these populations, so I have decided to include a few news stories sprinkled throughout Orcawatch this month, wherever relevant. Now, all news and science data is current as of the 24th of July. I wanted to push this a little bit later, but I knew this video is going to be kind of long. That's 24th of July inclusive, where IDs are positively confirmed. So there are some sightings where there have been sightings the days made prior to recording this video, which haven't been ID'd yet, and these won't be included. Basically, this list is as comprehensive as I can make it, but don't accept it as the full data set. There are a lot of encounters that are never reported anywhere, as I was finding out this month, actually. So this is actually a double month. So this is for June and July, because I was over in the Sailor Sea, and you'll see some of the good footage and photos I took during Orca Watch, and I'll be telling you about some of my experiences as well. If you want to see like my full experience, I do have a vlog coming. That vlog is gonna be pretty long. So what I'm gonna do is, once the vlog's ready, I'm gonna split it into probably about 20 parts. I'm gonna have a part per day that I was there. That will release like probably once a day. It won't replace our normal schedule, but we'll release it like once a day in that playlist. So let's talk about our Orca of the month for July, first of all. Now, this is T046 Nimbus. Now, I said prior to this month that the Orca of the month for July would be the first Orca I saw in the Sailor Sea. Now, Nimbus is a young Bigg Orca born in 2026, and they're even still orangish, as you can see on screen. Now, this happens because the calf does not have a lot of blubber yet, so the blood vessels are close to the surface of the skin. This is usual for calf. And so I actually saw the T49As on my first day while watching. I saw all of them together, so I had to pick one. I couldn't not pick Nimbus. Just so cute. So this calf is so adorable. Their mother is T49A Nan, and one of their brothers is the famous T49A6 Charlie 2, who is famous for having a rare underbite. Now, T49A7 has two oldest brothers who do not travel with the family. And one of these is T49A1, who I believe I did see on one day. And he travels solo. There's also T49A2, aka Jude, who we have been following recently on Orca Watch. The tale of Jude and Roswell will continue later on in the video, as they have their own section ever since I learned about their rescue together. Now, some of the footage that you're seeing on screen of Nimbus is taken from the 27th of June, which was the first day that I saw them. Now, because this video is actually spanning 2 months, we actually do have two Orcas of the month. Because we have one for August as well, and I went back and forth on several different Orcas for August, but I think there's only one that it can really be, I think, at this point. Given everything that I've experienced whilst I was out in the Sailor Sea and everything I know about this family, and I love this story. And we'll be hearing quite a bit more about like why this is like so important later on. And that is because August Orca of the month is T046 Wake. Now on screen you'll see a mix of the T046Bs and the T123s, who are both families descended from T046. So I've talked about Wake so many times in many various videos before, and it's time that she is the star of the month. T046 is probably my favorite Orca story. Just an example of how a single Orca can change the trajectory of a population. T046 was trapped with some other Biggs back in the capture era, in what would end up being the last Orca capture in the state of Washington. Now, the outcry and media attention and the witnessing of this by a politician known as Ralph Monroe eventually ended up in captures in the state of Washington being outlawed. So this was the final capture. In addition to that, Ralph Monroe managed to find out that this capture was illegally performed because they used explosives in the water to corral these orcas. So therefore, he managed to get the license revoked and managed to get all of these orcas released, these 6 orcas. Now, T046 disappeared for more than a decade. When she came back, she had calves. In her life, she went on to have 8 calves, with her last 3 offspring being males. The rest of them were daughters. T046 passed away in 2023 as an elder female, leaving her boys to be looked after by their assumed older sister, T122. Now, T122 does not have any calves of her own, so this is kind of like ideal for her to be looking after the 3 males. Now, I do believe one of these males may be deceased now. So T046's daughters, aside from T122, were also extremely prolific. Now, we're going to be showing on screen T046Bs. T046B has 7 living calves of 8, with the only calf that she lost being T046B5, who is the only known victim of infanticide in orcas, having been killed by T60A and T68A. And we're going to talk about them a little bit later on in the video because there was an incident this month as well regarding a calf. So we'll get into that a little bit later, more so towards the end of the video. Now, T046B also has 5 living grand calves of 7, with one of those grand calves actually being a white orca. Now, unfortunately, this was likely because of Chediak-Higashi syndrome, and what this does is it turns the blackness of the orca white, and also has a very profound impact on their health. Unfortunately, expectedly, this young male did not live past 3 years. Now, T046B has a grand calf. This calf was spotted for the first time the day after the death of Ralph Monroe. Ralph Monroe being the politician that was responsible for making sure that, first of all, these captures were outlawed, and second of all, getting these orcas released. That calf was called Monroe in his honor, and I was fortunate enough to see this orca. Now, another daughter of T046, T046C, has 5 calves, and they're all currently alive. T123, called Sydney, and oh my, that family is formidable. She has 5 calves, of which 4 are still alive, including Stanley, an infamous adult male orca who is rumored to be one of the biggest orcas in the entire West Coast transient population. Now, as you may have noticed, that's a lot of descendants that T046 has. And even more than that, T046's extended family has incredibly robust genes, with so many of them still being alive. And of those that had died, 2 of them were from some really freak occurrences, such as the only recorded orca infanticide and the rare Chedyakagashi syndrome. Imagine if she had been taken into captivity and the effect that that would have had on this population. This is a very good story to show that the conservation of even just one orca can make an enormous difference. And why does making an enormous difference matter? Well, the Bigg's population is in the hundreds. Unfortunately, the southern residents do not have that luxury. The southern residents used to be numbering like in the hundreds, like couple hundreds before the captive era. That's, by the way, that's numbers off the top of my head. Don't look too much into that. That's what I can remember number wise. I might be wrong on that, but nowadays there are less than 100, and it's a struggle. It's a struggle every time we see them, especially when they've got calves. And when I say a struggle, it's like it's because we see them so infrequently now, and it's also seeing them with a new calf, knowing that calf is up against it, really. So there were sightings of southern residents in June, but not July. They returned for 2 days. J and L Pod returned to the CSC on the 14th of June, stayed for the 15th. And they were at Limekiln Lighthouse for both these days. And they were mere meters from the shore. On the 15th of June, it was the most incredible day I can remember on the Whale Museum webcam at Limekiln. Hours of breaching, close passes, cartwheels, even some upside down swimming at the shore of Limekiln. There was even a moment where I was jealous. It looked like they turned back to look at someone on the coast. The pod I saw the most on the cameras was L Pod. And of course, I went into ID mode. I had to see if L90 was in there. And given how close they were and how high quality the Whale Museum's footage was, I was able to ID a few of them. Unfortunately, L90, our adopted orca, aka Belena, is an extremely hard whale for me to ID because her dorsal fin can kind of look like a juvenile mouse because it's a very tall dorsal fin. So I had a couple of views where I thought it might be her, but it was more likely someone else. Now, this was later confirmed by the Center for Whale Research that Belena was indeed present on the 15th of July. 15th of June. My notes say July, it's actually June. So every so often is what I call an Orca day. A day that is extraordinary. A day where I spend the whole evening with my 9-hour time difference, watching the cameras and just elsewhere getting invested into watching these orcas. And this mostly happens with southern residents, and I know I'm not the only one. When the southern residents come into town, it is a party. It's really a socialization event for us as well as whale enthusiasts. It's always a socialization event for them. It's a socialization event for us as well, because it starts a whole lot of chatter. It's one of those days where like you get to really talk to other whale enthusiasts who are happy to see the presence of the southern residents as well. Now, the presence of southern residents has triggered a voluntary slowdown led by Echo until October and November, depending on the location. This visit from the southern residents seemed to be only a couple of days, but then we got word from the Center for Whale Research. This was J-Pod and the Greater Elf Force. There was one amazing development as well discovered by the Center for Whale Research. A brand new calf known as L130. Now, L130 is a brand new calf born to L-Pod in the time that they've been gone. And it was seen for the first time whilst they were there on the 14th and 15th of June. The photo showed him or her next to suspectedly L91. However, Centre for Research were hesitant to speculate on the maternity, and the L91 connection is a citizen scientist observation from one photo. The Centre for Research did notice the calf, but is hesitant to assign maternity on it yet. The calf is about 1 to 3 months old, and the calf has been seen near L83, L86, and L118 as well. So the photo also shows that this calf, if it survives, will have an extremely recognizable right eye patch. And this is one of the most incredible eye patches I've ever seen from an orca. It's really cool. There's a dip at the top center of the eye patch, which is it kind of like it's normally the eye patch is straight along the top, but this one's got a bit of a dip. It's really cool. Now it has to be said that where there's time for hope, there's also unfortunately a reminder of how fragile this population is, because the previous latest calf, L129, who was born about 4 months ago, was initially thought to have been spotted, but it turns out it was L130 that was spotted. So it appears as if L129 is missing or deceased, unfortunately. Now, K-Pod haven't been seen in a while. They haven't been seen these 2 months either. So there's no confirmation on the survival of their youngest member either, who would be at least 6 months by now. Now, whilst I was in the Sailor Sea, I got inspired by the Orca Fin artwork campaign by Orca Behavior Institute, and also inspired by talking to so many people in the San Juan Islands. I even managed to have a conversation with Kelly Balcom, who is very much responsible for rescuing our adopted orca. If you want the full story of that Dies Inlet in 1997, leave a message in the comments. I will cover that. In fact, I'll probably cover that going forward on one of the Orca watches anyway, because I've been inspired to do something new for Orcawatch for the Southern residents. So the problem that I have is that there's not much that I can personally do in support of helping the Southern residents. I don't live in Washington State. I don't even live in the US. There's not really anything I can do if I'm not there, you know? But what I can do is I can make the most of the platform that I have. So it's important that even whilst the Southern residents are not present, that they are remembered. They are remembered. We keep them in our thoughts, and we're reminded every single time, every single month, that while they're not there, they're not gone completely, and they still need our help. Going forward, on months where we don't have Southern residents spotted, I will be spotlighting an individual orca or a story from the Southern residents instead. So we won't have any more months where there's not been any Southern resident sightings. Let's move on. If there's not been Southern resident sightings, we'll talk about the Southern residents still. Just keep them in everyone's mind. There are so many amazing stories that I know about, but there's only so many. And I will definitely need help on this. So I'm looking to you guys to potentially suggest some of your favorite Southern resident stories in the comments. And if you do leave a comment and it is your own story or a story that you've heard of, please state whether it's your own story or a story that you've heard of. If it is your own story, I'll get into contact and we'll see if we can feature it in an Orca watch. And I'll be trying to get some media that we can show for that as well. Not being present doesn't mean that they're going to ever be forgotten about. And I'm also going to each southern resident section, we're going to be talking about what are the threats facing them and one of the ways that we can help. So the main threat, as you guys already all know, is prey availability. And we talk so often about like dam removals, um, not putting up more dams, but there are some things that don't get enough mention. So this month, I want to mention about fish farms in British Columbia. So British Columbia has fish farms which have like Atlantic salmon. I don't know a whole lot about them, but I'm pretty sure it's like a mixed stock in there. Um, like if you want to learn more about the fish farms, Alexandra Morton's works are definitely the way to go. She covered it quite a bit in her autobiography, Listening to Orcas, and she's been campaigning ever since as well. But essentially, these are fish farms that have salmon all really, really tightly packed, and therefore they're for fishing, they're for consumption. But when they've got them all tightly packed like this, it creates a lot of parasites and it creates diseases as well. Now, you'd think, okay, well, this is fish farmed salmon. How is this a problem? It's because the Pacific salmon have to actually go past these nets, and they get infected by these parasites and these diseases as well. So these fish farms act as a barrier for the salmon when they're going out to the open sea, and they end up staying in the open sea for a few years before coming back to spawn. So I want to highlight that that is something that would definitely help. That would help not just the southern residents, but also salmon just in general, and it would also help the northern residents. Look, we need to start protecting salmon worldwide as well. It's not just in the Pacific Northwest that salmon's doing poorly, also in Europe. But in the Pacific Northwest, definitely in British Columbia, those fish farms, they need to go. So every month I'm going to also be highlighting one of the major threats to the southern residents. And it's also really important to remember these threats are not isolated. A lot of these threats have compounding issues. So prey availability, there's a lot of facets that will help conserve Chinook salmon. And during these 2 months, we actually had World Orca Day on the 14th of July. And World Orca Day is a perfect example. This story is a perfect example of why World Orca Day exists. To protect these orcas, we have to protect everything below them in the food chain as well. We have to protect Chinook salmon, help them like recover. The other thing we have to do is protect the harbor seal population from proposed culls, because the harbor seals now. Okay, I won't go into the harbor seals in this video. We have a short on the channel. We covered it in the last news video. Go watch that. I didn't realize when I made it at the time that actually there are proposed culls, and it's kind of more advanced than I thought. So we don't want those culls to happen. Not just for the orcas and the salmon, but also for the seals as well. So let's get on to our big orcas, and this video is going to be so long. So let's talk first of all about the T65Bs. Now, usually the outer coast of Vancouver isn't in our reporting area, but the T65Bs were spotted out there in the middle of June. But we cover them because like we're following this family. So I include them specially. And I write these sections incrementally as they're seen. And so we have a bit of a log. So even at the start, I'm like, okay, I'll include these because they've not been seen anywhere else. I could have just not include this section because, oh my God, they've been seen a lot. As of the 23rd of June, they re-entered the Sailor Sea. Then on the 30th of June, they kind of really kickstarted my vacation. They made my day. Um, Now this series is about giving factual data and news about orcas, but if we're orca enthusiasts, there has to be moments for like a personal moment with these amazing animals. And I'm going to take one here. The T65Bs were my first orcas. On the 30th of June, I saw them again, and I had this feeling of like I know they're old friends when my first thought seeing Birdsall is how much he's grown since the last time I saw him. His dorsal fin is pretty tall now, especially compared to what it was last time I saw him, and I do certainly notice that difference. This was a moment for me that was really important, and it reminded me of why conservation of nature is so important. If nature can create this amazing creature, that seeing him again sparks so many emotions that I wouldn't even feel with most people that I know, then maybe I need to ask, can I do more to protect nature? On the 4th of July, I saw them over near Nanaimo as well. Now, exactly 24 hours after that, they were on the southern end of Lopez Island. These whales travel fast, and you'll see a map on screen of how far they've traveled. Now, as mentioned at the start of the video, there was actually a very scary moment for the T65Bs. On the 16th of July, 7-year-old T65B2, also known as Nettle or Corvus, who was originally thought to be female, and when I first saw them, that was the case, until it was confirmed that he's a male. So this 7-year-old orca life stranded on the 16th of July, and this match line holds a very special place in my heart. So I was worried when I heard about this. He fortunately managed to self-rescue. A special effort were made by researchers and whale watching captains to get photos after to document the young whale's condition. I was actually on board a whale watching vessel whilst they were kind of coordinating to get someone to get photos for citizen science purposes. Fortunately, it does seem that he is fine. Now, the T36Bs. On the 10th of June, they socialized with the T65As, who are fast becoming one of my favorite match lines as well. They were seen again on the 12th of June, and I assume the report to be T36 and the T36Bs. They were seen again on the 15th of June, and then there was a long period where they were not spotted at all until a report towards the end of July of T36B and T36B4 far up into Alaska. So they've really gone north. I didn't see them on my visit. They're the only orcas that I saw the first time around that I didn't see the second time. This is starting to become a running joke now where I record these videos and then when I'm editing them, more news comes out and interesting, exciting news. So we're going to cover this quickly but just after the T36 section, because on the 28th of July in Puget Sound, the T36Bs were spotted, but they were with some interesting individuals. So they were with T137A Jack, so that is actually Flapjack, T36's grandson. So we'll talk a little bit more about him a little bit later on. They were also spotted with the T135s. Now, the T135s, if you don't know much about them, they're also known as the CA27s. So, what does CA mean? Let's explain this now. So, in the West Coast transients, you kind of got like two populations. They do interact, they do intermix, they do interbreed. But one predominantly stays off of the shore, one predominantly stays like in inshore waters. And so when you've got like most of the bigs in the Salish Sea, they'll have a T designation. There'll be more inshore waters, whereas CA is really like it stands for California. So these are mostly orcas that are spotted off of the coast of California and quite far out to sea. So this was interesting because this was the T046Bs, Jack, and three Californian bigs, plus T69E for whatever reason. And now this one I have to get confirmed. I will put on screen if this has been positively confirmed. CA46D. Now, I have had several conflicting reports on the IDs of these orcas. The things that seem certain are 36, 36Bs, Jack, 135s, the Californian orcas, and T69E. I have seen one report that has CA46D. So that's, I want to try and verify that if I can before this video goes out. I'll put something on screen or even like pinned message in the comments. Now the T99s, T99s were a good part of my vacation. They were seen in a 33-strong tea party on the 2nd of June. And they were seen again on the south end of Vancouver Island on the 28th of June. Now, they traveled through the San Juan Islands, and on the 3rd of July, I managed to finally meet up with them. And these are kind of old friends of mine as well. And as you know, the channel mascot is actually one of this match line, T99B Holly. But I saw more of her brother, Barakat, T99C. And I got this amazing breach shot of him on the 3rd of July. Now, they were breaching on the 3rd of July. I just didn't get much of it. They're kind of a little bit far off. I was kind of excited and happy that I saw them breaching. And then I did not realize that the 4th of July was about to happen. On the 4th of July, I was on an all-day boat trip, and I spent more time that day in Canada than in the US. So we saw them on the 4th of July, initially with T125A and T128. And so those two males then split off when the T99s joined the T109As. They were breaching a lot that day as well, and I got some fantastic footage. Now, 5 days later, they actually appear on an Orca Lab report when I was looking for northern resident reports. So they traveled. They really, really traveled. I'm going to talk about T125A and T128. So this is a pair of Alaskan brothers called Flotsam and Jetsam. Actually, depends who you are. There is a boat captain, who I won't say who calls them Bill and Ted. Because these two orcas come all the way from Alaska, and they do just periodically come through the Salish Sea for like a few weeks and then go back up north. They're two brothers. The ID guide is funny because it says they don't associate with their mother. So I don't know what's happened there. Falling out maybe. I want to mention actually something real quick that whilst I was out in the Salish Sea, I expected to learn like so much more stuff on orcas. I did not learn much at all that I didn't already know. And in fact, I came away from it with more questions than answers. One of those being really focused on dispersal among Bigg's orcas. Speaking of dispersal among Bigg's orcas, we need to talk about the T137s. So they were seen at the start of June, but not seen again until the 6th of July, where T137A Jack was spotted. And he was spotted with T65 and T63 chainsaw. as well as the T65Bs, the T75Bs, and T77 and T77D. Now, I was so close to being able to see this grouping. Burster was one of my favorite Orcas because it was my first Orca I saw. Jack is one of my favorite Orcas that I really, really wanted to see. And Chainsaw is one that, I'd love to see him. Same with Indy, actually. I missed Indy by a day. So this unusual grouping is rumored to have met up with the T49As and another unknown group late in the day. Now, eventually, this unknown group would be ID'd on FilmWave as the T37As, T46Bs, T100C, and T100F. Now, quickly, T100F was gendered this month by a naturalist on board a boat, and so T100F is a male. Now, if you don't know how they gender these orcas, if they're not a full adult male, or if they're not a full adult, they can't really tell those genders apart from their dorsal fins or their flippers. In adults, they can. Really tall dorsal fins are adult males. But the underside has specific markings, and it's on that underside that the markings are different per male and female. So getting an underside shot with a camera is the best way to gender a whale. And now, if you're trying to do this, you want to have proof that the whale that you want to have proof of ID of the whale that you're trying to gender as well. So it's good to have good photo ID photos of everyone involved in the encounter, which is what I tried to do quite a lot in this AFC, because we had quite a few individuals, such as T77E and one of the calves, I think it was a Nimbus actually, who wasn't gendered yet. So I was trying my best to get shots of those, but none of them breached. So unfortunately, I wasn't that lucky. So that means that this meetup would have included T137A, T65, T63, T65Bs, T75Bs, T77, T77D, T37As, T46Bs, T100C, and T100F, and T49As. That would have made quite a tea pie. I would have loved to see that. Now, I'm unable to confirm if this actually did occur, but it very much looked like it. And on that day, I saw the T49As again. Now, I eventually did see Jack on an occasion of absurdly good fortune from the shore. I had a theory going to that particular spot at Cow Point Lighthouse was going to be a good thing, because whales have to come in and out of that pass to go up Set One Channel. So I booked taxis a couple of days in advance, and then just so happens Jack passed meters from the shore as I'm there. So I was so happy about that. So in the middle of July, T137A Jack was still traveling solo in Puget Sound. Now, my personal theory is that he left for mating and was in Puget Sound looking to reunite with his mother and siblings. But they took a wrong turn because the rest of the T137s were spotted off Telegraph Cove on the 21st of July. So Telegraph Cove is on the north end of Vancouver Island. It's more in the northern resident territory. They had met with the T123s and the T37s. Now, I like this because the T123s and the T37s were the last Orcas of my trip. And to see they were still traveling together was really cool. Plus, T123s, we've already talked about them. They're descendant from T046 Wake. Now, on my trip, I had a new Orca to add to my list of favorites as well. E37A2, also known as Inky. It was the first Orca that I was the first person on any whale watching boat to properly identify from a photo I took and an ID guide. So I was really excited about that. I want to give shouts to Levi for helping me to confirm that. I also have a newfound appreciation for the T123s as well. They're kind of becoming one of my favorites, and they may be one that I keep a closer eye on like the entire time now. So let me tell you a bit about them. Sydney is the mother. She is pretty formidable. She is T123. T123A, aka Stanley, is her 26-year-old son, and one of the largest orcas in the population. We've already mentioned him. Now, being in his presence is pretty awe-inspiring. I'll also talk about T123C, also known as Lucky. Now, for any animal to be called Lucky, you know there's a story. Sydney life stranded with Stanley in 2011, and Lucky was born in 2012, which means Sydney was pregnant with T123C, Lucky, whilst she's stranded. And amazingly, the calf survived, was born, and is now called Lucky. There is a fourth member of this family, T123D Darcy, who is a roughly 8-year-old female. Now, onto the tales of our favorite duo, Jude and Roswell, who unfortunately don't seem to be a duo at the moment. So they were spotted together again throughout early June, and even once meeting up with T60C, another adult male. Incredibly, in the space of about 3 days, they both ended up off the coast of Oregon, showing once again how fast orcas travel when they want to. And on the 8th of July, it seems the duo has separated for now, with T51 seen with the T86A. So I also want to talk about a very curious day that happened. It was actually my first day out there. On the 27th of June, where potentially 3 different Bigg pods passed by Limekiln in only a matter of hours. But at the same time as the humpback whale was around and breached whilst I wasn't there. This is something that I realized was developing whilst I was actually out on the water, and with the help of a very credible source of science information. So it was a slow start to the day, but it ended up being pure whale chaos that day. First, the T49As went up north, giving the boat I was on the runaround. We went round one side of the island, and then like they went around the other side of the island. Next, the T65Bs were also on the route up north. The T49Bs and T50D were also then ID'd going up north. So all of this was spotted on the Whale Museum's live cameras. I'm going to be releasing a video on the Whale Museum shortly, probably in about like 2 or 3 weeks from when this goes live. Now on to Indie Watch, and this is yet another long section. So Indy's brother, Amir, T65A3, seems to be sticking with his family again. And I was halfway through June thinking, where's Indy? Where's he going to pop up? And for some reason, he just randomly popped up in a Tea Party sighting report on the 14th of June. He was then spotted again north of Vancouver Island with the T68Cs and T73Cs. Now, Indy has a number of special abilities, including being well-traveled. Now, on the 27th of June, the T65As were spotted again without Indy or his brother T65A3. So it's starting to kind of look like the dispersal of T65A3. Now, on the 8th of July, Indy was spotted again in Puget Sound. He managed to somehow get through the whole sea of whale-watching boats of the 4th of July weekend undetected. He's since spent his time in Puget Sound. Ever since, he hung out with the T-34s, hung out with the T-37 and T-37A1 for a bit, until on the 17th of July, the day after I left, he went up San Juan Channel. He was with 2 unidentified orcas, but it's possible he then met up with the T65Bs afterwards, who are his aunt and cousins. Maybe he just likes crabbing season and he went up there to play with crab pots. We'll never know. Now, speaking of orcas that travel fast, which we have a few times today, on the 29th of June, I was on the water when we encountered the T123s, T75Bs, T77, T77D, and T125A and T128. By the way, yay for my first ever T-Pie that day. So we encountered them initially on the south end of Lopez Island. We were with most of them for about an hour and a half. And we were just going up San Juan Channel leisurely. But then we had to travel up quite far ahead because the T123s simply just took off. In just 2 hours, they were at the top of San Juan Channel by Spider Island, and I realized that day just how fast orcas can travel. Now, that is it for the big orcas. I'm just going to give a bit of a note on our sightings data that while we get most of the southern resident sightings in the Salish Sea because they're always well reported, when it comes to bigs, from my experience here, well, from my experience in the Salish Sea, there's quite a few times when sightings don't reach us and they don't get properly reported in the space that we're seeing. And they might just not be reported at all. Or they could be reported without IDs or even the wrong IDs sometimes. But it's very uncommon for a match line to be only spotted once and not again. And in that case, usually a big deal is made of it. So we'll find out about it anyway. But there are also times when I will miss certain whales who are consistently dispersed. I sometimes have sightings reports that are an incomplete encounter. And the more I learn about all these families, the more I can reliably list when certain pairs of individuals are often apart. And an example of this this month was the T77s, who during my visit to the SAHC, I learned about and discovered they were split between T77, T77D, and T77C, T77E. So that's said that this list that you're seeing on screen, as comprehensive as I can make it, it isn't. It is most likely missing like one or two sightings, or it may even have sightings where one orca's dispersed or not dispersed, and it's kind of like mismarked. There was a brand new calf spotted with the T35As, seemingly the first calf of T35A1. On Finwave, this calf has already been labeled as T35A1A. Now on to a bit of a whale mystery here, because this is quite a heavy topic. A deceased calf, presumably Biggs, was spotted this month. Well, during the month of June, and it was spotted on the 10th of June. The calf was carried by T68A, who was traveling with T68, T68C1, T68C3s, that's the match line, and T69A4. The reason why this is so extraordinary is because T68 and T68A are the only bigs to have ever been recorded killing another orca calf, with them having killed T046 B5, which we mentioned a little bit earlier on in the video. Now, this calf still had its whiskers and orange skin, and was not able to be ID'd with any known orca, which means that this was very young and not catalogued. Now, what is sparking the interest here and got everyone wondering is whether this could actually be a repeat of the behavior that this same male and his mother became kind of infamous for. And in fact, the most bizarre thing is that when I looked further into this, I discovered that on the 8th of June, 2 days before, they were traveling with the T046B matriline. And the T046B matriline is the matriline of the calf that they killed several years ago, and they were traveling together. So you may be wondering why the T046Bs would allow T68 and T68A anywhere near their pod after that. But we also have to remember that orcas are not humans. They think differently. The suspected reason for the initial infanticide was so that T046B would be able to mate again sooner. This may suggest that T68 herself was the instigator. This could be a mother orca trying to get a female to mate with her son. That could have been the cause of it. Now, this isn't a theory without precedent in the animal kingdom. Most famously, male lions who usurp the dominant male will sometimes kill all of the cubs so that all the cubs are then of his lineage. The most core instincts in animals are survival and reproduction, passing on their genes, and there's even some animals that prioritize the latter to the former. Good example of this is actually salmon, where often salmon will die after spawning. So with T68 and T68A having killed one of T046B's calves, it is plausible that T68A then sired one of T046B's later calves. It is possible. Now, on the same day that T68A was seen with the dead calf, all of the T046Bs were spotted by the Center for Bioresearch, not with T68A and T68. The day after the deceased calf was seen, on the 11th of June, T68 and T68A seen again traveling with the T68Cs and T69D4 without the calf. Now, not enough is known to really do more than speculate. We do not know who the calf's mother is, as it was never seen alive. It could have been stillborn, or for whatever reason died shortly after birth. It could have even been the calf of T68A's niece, T68C1. With the calving interval, T68C3 is unlikely to be the mother. Now, for me, there are two very different examples of what this could be. One is when T68 and T68A killed a calf before and carried the body, and they may have done it again. Now, the other example and a theory that I have is J35. So J35 Telequa is a famous southern resident orca, famous for having carried two calves in a tall reef. And occasionally her family helped carry her deceased calf when she fed as well. So those are my two theories. The presence of T69D4 was also a mystery, although she was traveling with the T68Cs prior. So this may be a whale mystery that we never know the answer to. These are the facts and information. If I had to pick one theory on what happened, this is what I would speculate on. T68C1's calf was either stillborn or died soon after. And this is, in my opinion, a sign of grief on the death of T68A's niece's calf. I think it's valid to question if this is a second case of infanticide from the only two orcas that have ever been recorded doing it before. But I think this also creates a bit of a slight bias where this is the conclusion that most people come to. Now, before we talk about northern residents, and yes, they are back, I'm going to talk about one of my main sources of information I have for sightings for all kinds of ecotypes, and that is Finwave. So finwave.io is an online website and platform where you can submit photos from an encounter you had. Keep all the photos you upload arranged by encounter, if you're going to be doing this, to go into their database for IDing. And it is run by Basitology, and it massively helps with monitoring and research of many whale populations, particularly orcas. This gives them a data set without them having to go out on the ocean. Now, previously, Bigg and southern residents were open to everyone to contribute, but Basitology has announced that the northern residents have been opened up to everyone as well to contribute. And this is because there's proposed funding cuts on monitoring efforts for the northern residents. So everyone else submitting data on the northern residents does help basicology kind of fill that gap that's going to be lost through lack of funding. So if you see northern residents, consider contributing them to Finwave. What you're going to want to try and do, you're going to want to try and see if you can identify every individual present, as in how many orcas are present. See if you can get a photo of every single one. Work out if you can confirm that you've got a photo of every single one. You're going to be wanting to look at dorsal fins from perpendicular, including saddle patches. You want them to be clear, as clear as possible. Eye patches also work as well. So that's kind of the ones that you want to be submitting there, the data. Note the location that you saw them, the day, and whether there was predation or not as well, because there is also predation. But when it's northern residents, it's a lot harder to see if there's predation. So for our northern resident coverage in Orcawatch, I've decided only to cover those within the critical habitat. So basically up to the top of Vancouver Island. On the 23rd of June, for the first time since autumn last year, Orca Lab's hydrophones and cameras picked up northern residents. Now, our northern resident sightings information comes mostly from Orca Lab's blog posts, which you should go and read in full because they go way more into detail about what these whales were doing. They give details. We only give match line numbers for these sighting reports. And we also get some of our data from the aforementioned Finwave. So what you read in Orca Labs blogs is stuff that you could also see on their cameras, and they do highlights videos on YouTube as well. Now, I'll leave links in the description. I'll link to a video we released recently on the channel all about northern residents, so you can learn who they are, how they communicate, what they eat, and pretty much everything about them. And all the footage in that video, well, most of the footage in that video, I shouldn't say all of it, because there's some that come from other sources, but most of the footage on that video, and it's all credited, comes from Orca Labs cameras, specifically the highlight reels from, I believe, last year or the year before. So you can actually see these live right now. They're, you're watching this video, it's like August. You probably can see orcas on the Orca Lab webcams right now. Go check, see if you can find them. If not, you'll have timestamps in the chat by people and you'll be able to find them that way. So for the northern residents, we're only going to cover those seen within the vicinity of Vancouver Island, but we're going to make an exception for A73 Springer, who anytime I see her listed anywhere, I'm going to cover regardless of where her match line pops up, because I just really like a success story. And there's too many stories that have kind of a bad ending when it comes to resident orcas as a whole. So I like covering success stories. So the first day was the 23rd of June. The A23s came in. I like to think that because they made an initial visit and there was a very slow start to the season, I think that it was just not time for a salmon run yet. But they were there to check if the restaurant was open yet. Eventually, they started to become more frequent. Now, if you want more information about what A and R means, go and watch the video. I'll link in the comment. I'll leave link in the description. And you know what? At the end screen, the end card of this video, also included on there as well. Okay, so I'm recording this on the 28th of June. I've decided I've got to cut in and add something here because there's been more developments on the northern residents. Unfortunately, there has been a northern resident that's passed away. Well, two of them that passed away. And normally I would cover this in the births and deaths, but I think what we're going to do with like northern residents, just everything northern resident just stays together. So The orca that passed away was unfortunately A75, also known as Cedar, and her youngest calf, A38. And this was reported by Jared Towers of Base Cytology. And this was confirmed around the 22nd, 23rd of July. Now, A75, last time she was seen was last year, and she was she didn't look that great. So it's not so unexpected, and the calf would not have been able to survive on its own. However, the rest of A75's offspring, A101, A113, and A127, seem to be doing well. Additionally, another orca, A55, also known as Echo, also the son of Simum, who is an adopted orca with the WDC Orca Lab partnership. So he's been spotted, and there is an active health concern on him because he looks severely malnourished, and he's kind of developing a bit of a peanut head. If you don't know what that is, that's a depression in the head, like a little bit behind the melon, where he's losing fat basically, and you're starting to see all these depressions, and that's never a good sign. And so we might unfortunately have another northern resident passing away soon. On July the 25th, the group of A125, the match line, 3 orcas, were spotted in the Salish Sea. This, I believe, is the first time this year that they've been spotted there. Last year, they did spend quite a bit of time in the Salish Sea as well, around that kind of area. And on to our final sightings information. No, unfortunately, it's not offshores. This is actually more in the European region. Because John Coe and Aquarius, the 2 famous Scottish resident orcas, the final 2 of their ecotype, unfortunately functioning extinct, and also John Coe being one of, if not the oldest male orca to ever live. They were both spotted together off the coast of Ireland this month. And, you know, we love hearing about these two. These two are amazing, and they're so recognizable. It's lovely to hear them traveling together and like seeing them again. Because honestly, it's really sad that they are part of a functioning extinct population. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the footage and the metering I included as well. I had a blast in the Salish Sea. And while I didn't learn a lot about like the orcas that I do know before, I did learn a lot about sighting data and kind of how the interactions work with that. So yeah, thank you everyone so much for watching. If you want to see the video on the northern residents, it'll be in the description, and you'll see appear on screen right now. If you liked the video, like it, please comment if you've got any opinions on anything we covered today, because we covered quite a lot of topics. This was kind of covered like a one-man podcast, so to speak, about orcas. So comment, like ask questions or give opinions. What do you think? Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. And yeah, have a good rest of your day.